My husband, David, was in the shower, singing some old-school Motown tune at the top of his lungs when his phone buzzed on the bathroom vanity. I was just in there to grab a fresh towel. I glanced down. The screen lit up with a message from a number I didn't recognize, but the name saved was just T. The text was short, but it hit me like a physical slap to the face. "I miss you, handsome." I froze. My hand hovered over that phone for a split second before instinct took over. I unlocked it. His passcode was still the year our son was born, predictable old man, and I typed back for him. "Come over. My wife isn't home tonight." I hit send, watched the read receipt pop up, and then deleted the message from his sent folder. This is where the story truly begins. Before we dive in, what time is it where you are? Which country are you watching from? Leave a comment and let me know. And please hit that like button and subscribe to become part of Mama Joyce's Chronicles community for more inspiring stories. I put the phone back exactly where it was, lined up with the edge of the marble sink. My heart wasn't racing, my hands weren't shaking. I'm 60 years old. I've raised 3 kids, buried my parents, and beaten breast cancer. I don't have time to panic over a man acting like a fool. Instead, a cold, hard calm settled over me. It was the kind of calm you feel right before a tornado touches down. Through the frosted glass of the shower door, I could see David's silhouette. He was scrubbing away, probably washing off the guilt, or maybe getting fresh for her. We had been married for 32 years. 32 years of building this life. We started in a one-bedroom apartment with rats in the walls, and now we were standing in a custom-built home in the suburbs with heated floors. I looked around the bathroom. I picked out these tiles. I chose the granite. I built his credit score up from nothing. And this is how he repays me? With a T who misses him on a Tuesday night? David turned off the water. "Joyce, you in there, babe?" he called out, his voice cheerful, oblivious. "Just grabbing a towel, David," I said. My voice was steady, smooth as silk. I didn't recognize it myself. "Take your time. I'm going downstairs to pour us a drink." I walked out of the bedroom and down the grand staircase, my slippers making no sound on the hardwood. The house smelled like the pot roast I had been slow cooking for 6 hours. It was the smell of comfort, of stability, of a good wife doing her job. I walked into the kitchen, but I didn't pour a drink. I sat on a bar stool at the kitchen island, staring at the front door. 10 minutes passed, then 20. David came downstairs looking like $1,000,000. He was wearing his favorite silk pajamas, smelling like the expensive sandalwood body wash I bought him for Christmas. He looked good for 62, I'll give him that. He rubbed his stomach and smiled at me, that charming smile that used to make my knees weak. "Smells amazing in here, Joyce," he said, walking over to kiss me on the cheek. "You outdid yourself again." I let him kiss me. It felt like a betrayal of my own skin, but I didn't flinch. "I wanted tonight to be special," I said, looking him dead in the eye. "We haven't had a surprise in a long time." He chuckled, opening a bottle of red wine. "You're right about that. A quiet night in is just what the doctor ordered." He had no idea. He thought he was safe in his castle. He thought T was just a flirtation on a screen, safe and distant. He didn't know I had opened the gates and invited the enemy right into our living room. I checked the clock on the microwave. It had been 30 minutes. If she was eager, and they always are, she'd be here any second. David took a sip of wine and leaned back, relaxed and happy. "Life is good, Joyce," he said. "Life is really good." Ding dong! The doorbell echoed through the house. It wasn't loud, but in the silence of the kitchen, it sounded like a gavel hitting a judge's desk. David jumped, spilling a little wine on his hand. He frowned, looking confused. "Who on earth is coming over at 8:30 at night?" he muttered, grabbing a napkin. I didn't move. I just smiled, sipping my water. "I don't know, David," I said softly. "Why don't you go answer it?" If you're loving this story, smash that like button and subscribe for more.
David set his wine glass down on the granite counter with a heavy sigh. He looked annoyed, not scared. In his mind, the biggest problem he had right now was an interruption to his relaxing evening. Probably some kid selling chocolate bars or a neighbor complaining about the recycling bins, he grumbled, tightening the belt on his silk pajama bottoms. I watched him walk down the hallway. His posture was so confident, the walk of a man who owned the place, who felt untouchable. I swiveled calmly on my bar stool, my eyes glued to his back. Go ahead, David. Open Pandora's box. I heard the heavy deadbolt click, then the squeak of the hinges. The front door swung open, letting in a gust of cool night air that drifted all the way into the kitchen. "Can I help?" David started to say, but the words died in his throat. Silence. A thick, heavy silence that felt like it sucked all the oxygen out of the foyer. I didn't need to see his face to know the blood had just drained out of it. I slid off the stool. My knees popped a little. I am 60 after all. But I stood tall. I smoothed down my cashmere cardigan and walked slowly toward the door. I took my time. I wanted to savor the moment the hammer dropped. When I reached the hallway, the scene was painted like a tragic oil painting. David was gripping the door handle so tight his knuckles were white. Standing on our welcome mat was a young woman. She couldn't have been more than 25. She was shivering, not just from the cold, but from the shock. She was wearing a raincoat that was tied visibly tight at the waist and high heels that looked painful. In her hand, she clutched a bottle of cheap Moscato. She was smiling when the door opened, a flirtatious, expectant smile. But the second she saw David's paralyzed face, that smile crumbled. "David?" she stammered. Her voice was high-pitched, shaky. You look surprised. You told me to come over." David opened and closed his mouth like a fish out of water. He looked back at the interior of the house, then back at her, panic wild in his eyes. He started to push the door closed. "You have the wrong house," he rasped, his voice cracking. "Go away." "No, she doesn't," I said. My voice boomed in the entryway. I stepped out of the shadows and stood right next to my husband. I didn't look at him. I looked straight at her. The girl gasped. Her eyes went wide, darting from David to me. She took a stumble back, her heel catching on the brick step. She looked like a deer caught in the headlights of a semi-truck. She realized in a split second that she hadn't walked into a romantic rendezvous. She had walked into a trap. She stuttered, clutching that cheap wine bottle like a lifeline. "I think I made a mistake." "You certainly did, honey," I said, crossing my arms. "But since you drove all the way out to the suburbs at this hour, it would be rude of us to leave you standing in the cold." David finally found his voice. He spun around to look at me, sweat already beading on his forehead, despite the draft. "Joyce, baby, I don't know who this is. She's crazy. It's a prank. Let's just close the door." He tried to slam the door shut, but I put my hand firmly on the wood. I'm stronger than I look. Years of gardening and carrying grandbabies gives you a grip of steel. I held the door open. "We aren't doing that, David," I said, my voice dropping to a whisper that was scarier than a scream. "She says you invited her. I want to hear all about it." I looked back at the girl. She was already turning around, looking for her car, looking to run. But I wasn't done with her yet. The game had just started. "Don't run off now," I called out to her, putting on my best church lady smile. "Come inside. I've got a pot roast resting on the counter, and since my husband seems to have lost his manners, I'd love for you to join us for dinner. I insist." If you're loving this story, smash that like button and subscribe for more.
The girl, let's call her Tanya, stepped over the threshold like she was walking onto a minefield. Her eyes were darting around, taking in the crystal chandelier, the polished oak floors, and the family portraits lining the hallway. She looked small, cheap, in this house that I had spent 3 decades curating. She looked like a stain on a silk dress. David was practically hyperventilating behind me. "Joyce, seriously, she's just confused. She needs to go," he pleaded, his voice cracking like a teenager's. "Nonsense," I said, ignoring him completely. I reached out and took the bottle of Moscato from Tanya's freezing hands. "Let me take that. And your coat. You're dripping on my hardwood." I didn't wait for her permission. I pulled the wet raincoat off her shoulders. Underneath, she was wearing a little black dress that was tight enough to cut off her circulation. I saw David's eyes flick to her waist, then quickly away when he caught me watching. I hung her coat on the rack right next to David's church suit. The contrast was almost funny. "Come, sit in the living room," I commanded. It wasn't an invitation. I led them into the sunken living room. I sat in my favorite armchair, the high-backed velvet one that makes me look like a queen on her throne. I gestured for Tanya to sit on the love seat. David stood awkwardly in the middle of the room, wringing his hands. "Sit down, David," I snapped. "You're making me nervous." He collapsed onto the sofa opposite Tanya, looking like a man awaiting sentencing. The silence stretched out, thick and suffocating. You could hear the antique clock ticking on the mantelpiece. Tick, tock, tick, tock, counting down the seconds of his marriage. "So," I said, crossing my legs and smoothing my skirt. I held up the bottle of cheap wine Tanya had brought. "Moscato, $7.99 at the gas station, if I recall correctly. David usually prefers a Cabernet that costs more than your car note, but I suppose he has varied tastes." Tanya flinched. She looked down at her hands, her fake nails digging into her palms. I didn't know he was married. He told me he was a widower." I let out a laugh. It was a sharp, barking sound that made them both jump. "A widower? Did you hear that, David? Apparently, I'm dead." David turned a shade of gray I'd never seen before. "I never said that," he lied, but he couldn't even look at her. "She's misunderstanding." "I have the texts," Tanya blurted out, her voice rising in panic. She was realizing that David wasn't going to protect her. She was on her own. "He said his wife passed away 3 years ago. He said he was lonely." I looked at my husband, the man I had nursed through knee surgery, the man I had bailed out of debt twice in the 90s. 3 years ago, I mused. 3 years ago, we were renewing our vows in Hawaii. Remember? You cried during the ceremony. David put his head in his hands. He was crumbling. But I wasn't done. I wasn't even close to done. I stood up and walked over to the wet bar. "Since we have a guest, we should have a toast," I said cheerfully. I grabbed 3 glasses. For David and myself, I pulled down the heavy Waterford crystal tumblers. Heavy, expensive, solid. For Tanya, I reached into the back of the cabinet and pulled out an old faded plastic cup we used to use for the grandkids when they were toddlers. It had a cartoon duck on it. I poured the cheap Moscato into the plastic duck cup and set it down on the coaster in front of her. Then I poured the expensive red wine for David and me. "Here you go, sweetie," I said, smiling that dangerous smile again. "Don't want you breaking anything valuable." Tanya stared at the plastic cup. Her face burned bright red. She knew exactly what I was doing. I was telling her, without saying a word, exactly what she was worth in this house. "Now," I said, taking a slow sip of my wine, savoring the rich taste. "Tanya, was it? You must work with David. He mentioned a tea from the office.
Tell me, does he fall asleep in meetings like he does on the couch, or does he manage to stay awake when he's chasing girls young enough to be his granddaughter?" Tanya stared at the little cartoon duck on her plastic cup, her face burning so hot I could practically feel the heat coming off her from across the room. She didn't take a sip. She looked like she wanted the floor to open up and swallow her whole right there. "What's the matter, honey?" I asked, leaning back in my throne. "Is the vintage not to your liking? Or maybe you just realized that playing house with a married man isn't as glamorous as it looks on TV." David finally sat up a little straighter, trying to regain some scrap of dignity. He cleared his throat, avoiding my eyes. "Joyce, stop it. You've made your point. She's leaving." "I haven't even started," I said, my voice dropping an octave. I set my crystal glass down on the coaster with a sharp clink. I stood up and walked over to the sofa where David was sitting. I sat right next to him, uncomfortably close. I draped my arm around his shoulders, feeling his muscles tense up like rocks. He smelled like fear and expensive cologne. "You see, Tanya," I said, smoothing the collar of David's silk pajamas, "David here is a man of specific needs. He likes to play the big shot at the office, the silver fox. But tell me, did he tell you about his sciatica, or how he has to take 3 different pills before bed just to keep his blood pressure from exploding?" Tanya's eyes widened. She looked at David's stomach, then his face. The illusion of the strong, virile lover was cracking. "And I bet he didn't tell you about his allowance," I continued, smiling sweetly at my husband. David whipped his head toward me. "Joyce, don't," he warned, his voice low. "Oh, I think I will," I said. I turned back to the girl. "David doesn't have a dime to his name, sweetheart. This house, my name is on the deed. That Mercedes he drives to pick you up, I co-signed the lease because his credit was shot after his failed business venture in '08. He gets a weekly transfer from our joint account, which I manage, to buy his lunch and gas." Tanya's mouth dropped open slightly. She looked at David with a mix of confusion and disgust. She wasn't looking at a rich sugar daddy anymore. She was looking at a dependent. "So when he took you out for those nice dinners," I said, leaning in, "he was paying with my money. You've been eating off my plate this whole time." I reached out and grabbed David's hand, interlacing our fingers. He tried to pull away, but I held on tight. I lifted his hand and kissed his knuckles, staring right at Tanya while I did it. It was a possessive, territorial move. I was marking my territory. "He's not a prize, Tanya. He's a project, and I've been working on this project for 30 years. You really think you can just swoop in and steal the credit?" Tanya looked like she was about to cry. I didn't know about the money. He said he was the VP of sales." "He is," I laughed, "and I'm the CFO of this marriage." I let go of David's hand and stood up abruptly. "But you know what? Talking about money makes me hungry. I have that pot roast in the kitchen. David, be a dear and go get the carving knife, and grab an extra plate. I want Tanya to see exactly what a real wife provides." David didn't move fast enough, so I clapped my hands. "Chop, chop, honey, your guest is waiting." He scrambled up and ran to the kitchen like a dog with its tail between its legs. I was alone with Tanya again. The air was thick. I walked over to the mantel and picked up a framed photo of our whole family, kids, grandkids, David and me, from last Thanksgiving. I walked over to Tanya and dropped the heavy frame right into her lap. It landed with a thud on her knees. "Look at that," I whispered, looming over her. "That's a fortress. That's a legacy. You're just a crack in the sidewalk." David came back in with the tray of meat, shaking, but as he set it down, I pulled my phone out of my pocket. It was time to stop playing with toys and bring out the big guns. Actually, before we eat, I have one more little thing to clear up. Tanya, you said you missed him, right? Well, I found something interesting in the cloud storage David shares with me. He thinks he deleted it, but he's not very tech-savvy. I turned the screen toward them. It wasn't a photo. It was a bank statement I had pulled up earlier that day, and what I was about to read out loud was going to turn this awkward dinner party into a crime scene. If you're loving this story, smash that like button and subscribe for more.
David's eyes were glued to the screen of my phone like a deer watching a hunter load a rifle. He knew exactly what transaction I was looking at. October 12th, I read aloud, my voice crisp and clear. Wire transfer, $2,500. Recipient, Luxury Leathers Boutique. I looked at Tanya. I looked at the brand new designer handbag resting on the floor next to her feet. It was a nice bag, Italian leather, the kind of bag that screams, "I have money," even when you don't. "Is that a gift from David?" I asked, pointing a manicured fingernail at the bag. Tanya pulled the bag closer to her legs, looking guilty. He got it for my birthday." "How sweet," I said, my voice dripping with sarcasm. "David, tell her whose account that money came from." David wiped sweat from his upper lip. "Joyce, we can talk about finances later." "We're talking about them now," I snapped. I turned the phone to Tanya. "That account is named Sarah's Tuition. Sarah is our youngest granddaughter. David drained his own grandbaby's college fund to buy you a purse." Tanya gasped. She actually covered her mouth with her hand. She looked at David with genuine horror. It's one thing to date a married man. It's another to date a man who steals from toddlers. "You told me you got a bonus," Tanya yelled at him. "You said you closed a big deal." "He hasn't closed a deal since 2015, I said calmly. "He's been riding a desk for a decade. But that's not the worst part." I scrolled down further. November 3rd, $500, flowers by design. November 5th, $300, sparkle jewelry. Tanya frowned. I didn't get flowers in November, and I definitely didn't get any jewelry." The room went dead silent. David froze. He stopped breathing. I looked at David, then back at Tanya, a cruel smile spreading across my face. "Oh, honey, you didn't think you were the only T in his phone, did you? You're not the girlfriend. You're just part of the rotation." Tanya looked like she was going to be sick. David looked like he was going to pass out. I stood up and walked over to the dining table where the food was waiting. "Now that we've established who paid for what," I said, picking up the serving spoon, "let's eat. I made David's favorite, but I think I'll serve our guest first. After all, she's got a lot to swallow tonight." I piled a heap of meat onto a plate, but I didn't hand it to her. I did something that made David's jaw hit the floor. I took that heaping plate of tender, slow-cooked pot roast, the kind that falls apart if you even look at it wrong, and I set it down right in front of David. The steam wafted up, smelling like rosemary and red wine. David stared at it, his stomach probably doing flip-flops, but he didn't dare push it away. "Eat up, Daddy," I said, my voice sweet as poisoned honey. "You need your strength. It's hard work juggling so many lies." I picked up the fork, stabbed the juiciest piece of beef, and held it to his lips. "Open," I commanded. David hesitated. His eyes darted to Tanya, who was watching this twisted display of affection with her mouth hanging open.
He looked like a beaten dog, but he opened his mouth. I fed him. He chewed slowly, looking like he was eating ash. Then I turned to Tanya. I picked up the second plate, the one I had told David to grab for our guest. I walked over to the pantry, grabbed a sleeve of stale, unsalted saltine crackers, and dumped a handful onto the china. I slid the plate of dry crackers across the table toward her. "There you go, honey," I said, wiping my hands on a napkin. "I'd offer you the roast, but I only cook the good stuff for family. And let's be real, you're just a visitor, a temporary distraction. Crackers seem more your speed." Tanya looked at the dry crackers, then up at me, tears finally spilling over her mascara-heavy lashes. The humiliation was settling in deep. She wasn't fighting for a man anymore. She was fighting to keep from shattering into a million pieces. "Who got the flowers?" she whispered, her voice trembling. "If I got the bag and you're the wife, who got the flowers in November?" I laughed, pouring myself another glass of wine. "Sharp girl, you finally caught on. David, tell her about gym nights on Thursdays." David slammed his fork down. "Joyce, enough. Stop torturing her." "I'm not torturing her. I'm educating her," I yelled, losing my cool for just a fraction of a second before reeling it back in. "She thinks she's special. She thinks she's the younger, better version of me. She needs to know she's just Tuesday. The flower girl is Thursday, and I'm the bank. I'm the roof. I'm the reason you even have a suit to wear to work to impress these girls." Tanya stood up, her legs shaking in those high heels. "I'm leaving," she sobbed. "I can't do this. You people are sick." She grabbed her purse, the one bought with my grandbaby's college money, and turned toward the hallway. David looked like he wanted to run after her, but one look from me glued him to his chair. "Sit down, Tanya," I barked. My voice echoed off the high ceilings. She froze. "You don't get to walk out just because it got uncomfortable," I said, walking slowly toward her. "You walked into my house. You drank my wine. You sat on my furniture. The show isn't over yet. We haven't even gotten to the main event." Tanya wiped her eyes, looking terrified. What else could you possibly do?" I smiled, checking the time on my phone. 9 p.m. sharp. Headlights flashed through the front bay window, sweeping across the living room walls. A car door slammed outside. "You didn't think I only invited you to the party, did you?" I whispered, leaning in close to her ear. "I sent one more text while David was in the shower. And trust me, this guest is going to make you wish you had stayed home."
The second doorbell ring wasn't polite like the first one. It was aggressive. Someone was leaning on that button, holding it down like they were trying to punch a hole through the wall. Bzzz. David jumped so hard he knocked his wine glass over. Red Cabernet soaked into the white tablecloth, spreading like a fresh gunshot wound. "Joyce!" he stammered, his voice trembling. "What did you do? Who is that?" "I told you, David," I said, calmly blotting the spill with a napkin. "I like to be thorough." I walked to the door again. I didn't rush. I wanted the tension to build until it was suffocating. I unlocked the deadbolt and swung the door wide open. Standing on the porch was a man who looked like he could bench press a Buick. He was young, maybe 28, wearing a mechanic's uniform with the name Marcus stitched on the pocket. He was breathing hard, his fists clenched at his sides. He looked past me, scanning the hallway with eyes full of fire. "Is she here?" he growled. His voice was low and dangerous. I stepped aside, gesturing grandly toward the living room like a game show host unveiling a new car. "Right this way, Marcus. They're just finishing appetizers."
Marcus stormed past me, his heavy work boots thudding against the floor. I followed him, a small smile playing on my lips. I had found Marcus's number in Tanya's phone when I hung up her coat earlier. It was saved under Hubby Heart. A quick text from her phone saying, "I'm at this address and I'm cheating on you," was all it took. We walked into the living room. Tanya was standing by the sofa, clutching her purse. When she saw Marcus, the color drained from her face so fast she looked like a ghost. "Marcus?" she squeaked. "Baby, what are you doing here?" Marcus stopped in the center of the room. He looked at Tanya, trembling in her little black dress. Then he looked at David, old, balding, soft David, sitting there in his silk pajamas with pot roasts stuck in his teeth. The look of disgust on Marcus's face was priceless. "This?" Marcus yelled, pointing a grease-stained finger at my husband. "You're blowing off our engagement dinner for this? Ideally, I thought you were with some rich guy, Tanya. This dude looks like he needs a hearing aid." David shrank into the sofa cushions. He looked small, pathetic. He wasn't the VP of sales anymore. He was just a terrified old man caught with another man's woman. Now, Marcus," I said, leaning against the doorframe with my arms crossed. "Don't be too hard on him. David told her he was a wealthy widower. I guess they both like telling fairy tales." Marcus turned to Tanya, his eyes watering. "You swore to me, T. You swore you were working late. We put a deposit on the venue yesterday." Tanya started sobbing, ugly, heaving cries. "It's not what it looks like. He tricked me." "He tricked you," I interrupted, my voice sharp as a whip. "Or did you see a luxury handbag and decide it was worth more than your fiancé?" The room was chaos. Tanya crying, Marcus yelling, David shaking. It was a symphony of destruction, and I was the conductor. But I noticed something. David was looking at his phone, trying to slide it under his leg. He was trying to hide something. I walked over and snatched the phone out of his hand before he could blink. "What do we have here, David? Trying to delete more evidence?" I looked at the screen. It wasn't a text. It was an email notification that had just popped up. And when I read the subject line, I realized that tonight wasn't just about destroying his love life. It was about to destroy his entire future. If you're loving the story, smash that like button and subscribe for more. I held the phone up to the light, squinting dramatically as if I needed reading glasses, even though the words were clear as day. The screen glowed with a notification from his work email. Subject: urgent. Internal audit inquiry regarding expense account, I read aloud. My voice cut through the chaos like a knife through butter. The room went silent again. Marcus stopped yelling. Tanya stopped sobbing. David looked like he was having a heart attack. "Give me the phone, Joyce!" David lunged for it, desperate, clawing at the air. I stepped back easily, sidestepping him like a matador dodging a clumsy bull. "Not so fast, David. Let's see what HR has to say. Mr. Evans, we have flagged several unauthorized transactions categorized as client entertainment at Luxury Leathers and Sparkle Jewelry." I looked up at Tanya, raising an eyebrow. "Client entertainment? Is that what we're calling it these days?" I continued reading, enjoying every syllable. "Effective immediately, your corporate card is suspended pending a full investigation. Please report to the CEO's office tomorrow at 8 a.m. David sank back onto the sofa, burying his face in his hands. A guttural groan escaped his throat. He realized the game was up. He hadn't just used our grandbaby's tuition, he had maxed out that account and then moved on to the company card to keep his little playthings happy. He was robbing Peter to pay Paul, and now both Peter and Paul were at the door with baseball bats. Marcus let out a harsh, cruel laugh. It started low and turned into a roar. He looked at Tanya, shaking his head. "You left me," Marcus said, pointing at David, "for a guy who is not only old and cheating on his wife, but is also about to be unemployed and probably prosecuted for embezzlement?" Tanya looked at David with pure horror. The illusion of the rich, powerful executive dissolved completely. She wasn't looking at a sugar daddy anymore. She was looking at a liability. "You used the company card?" she whispered, disgusted. "David, are you insane?" "I was going to pay it back," David yelled, his voice cracking. "I just needed a little time. I was waiting on a bonus." "There is no bonus, David," I shouted, slamming the phone down on the table. The screen cracked, just a hairline fracture, fitting for his life right now. "You haven't hit a quota in 3 years. The only reason you still had a job is because I played golf with the CEO's wife and convinced her you were just going through a phase. But yesterday, I sent her an email too. I attached the receipts for the bag and the flowers." David looked at me with wide, wet eyes. You reported me?" "I protected my assets," I corrected him coldly. "I knew if the company found out on their own, they might come after our house for restitution. By reporting you myself, I made sure they knew I was the innocent party. The house is safe. You, however, are toast." Marcus grabbed Tanya by the arm, not gently. "We're leaving," he spat. "You want a ride, or are you staying with the felon?" Tanya didn't even look back at David. She grabbed her purse, the evidence, and ran after Marcus. "Marcus, wait! I didn't know! I swear!" The front door slammed shut in its wake. The sudden quiet was heavy. The audience was gone. The mistress was gone. The fiancé was gone. Now it was just me and David, and the final reckoning. David looked up at me, tears streaming down his face. He looked broken. "Joyce," he whispered, "I'm sorry. I messed up. We can fix this. We have 30 years. Please don't throw it all away." I looked at him. I looked at the man I had washed socks for, cooked meals for, and built a life with, and I felt nothing. No anger, no sadness, just the cold realization that I was looking at a stranger. "You're right, David. We have 30 years, or rather, I have 30 years of hard work invested in this life. You just spent your equity." I turned and walked toward the stairs. Where are you going?" he asked, his voice trembling with hope. "No, David," I said softly, pausing with my hand on the banister. "I'm not going up to talk. I'm going up to get the suitcase I packed for you 3 hours ago. But before you leave, there's one last thing you need to see. Something I found in the garage that explains everything about Thursday night gym sessions." If you're loving this story, smash that like button and subscribe for more. I walked to the top of the stairs, grabbed the handle of the large Samsonite suitcase I had packed that afternoon, and I didn't carry it down gently. I let gravity do the work. Thump, thump, thump. It tumbled down the hardwood steps, hitting the bottom with a loud crash that made David flinch. "There," I said, descending the stairs like I was walking down a runway. "Your clothes, your toiletries, and your heart medication. I'm not a monster, David. I don't want you dying on my front porch." David stared at the suitcase, then up at me. He looked like a child who had dropped his ice cream cone in the dirt. "Joyce, please, where am I supposed to go? It's freezing outside. I have no car. I have no money." "That sounds like a you problem," I said, reaching the bottom step. "But before you go, let's talk about that garage discovery." I walked over to the entryway table where I had left a small, dusty cardboard box. It smelled like old rubber and motor oil. I had found it tucked behind the winter tires, inside his fishing tackle box, which I knew he never touched because the man hadn't fished since 1998. "You recognized this?" I asked, holding it up. David's face went pale white. He knew exactly what it was. I opened the lid and pulled out a cheap plastic flip phone, a burner phone. "I charged it up while you were scrubbing yourself in the shower," I said, and I listened to the voicemails. I pressed the speakerphone button. A woman's voice, raspy and annoyed, filled the silent hallway. "Hey, David, it's Thursday. Don't forget the rent money this time or don't bother coming over. And stop bringing that cheap wine. My friends are making fun of me." I pressed another button, a different voice. "Davy, honey, I need another $200 for my car repair. Also, you left your back brace at my place. Come get it. It's creeping me out." I clicked the phone shut and tossed it onto the pile of his clothes. "You weren't at the gym, David," I said, shaking my head with pity. "You weren't getting fit. You were paying women half your age to tolerate you. You were buying companionship because you were too insecure to be a real man to the woman who actually loved you." David fell to his knees. He was sobbing openly now, snot running down his nose, clutching the hem of my skirt. "I was lonely. I felt old. They made me feel young again, Joyce. It was just an ego boost. It didn't mean anything." I stepped back, pulling my skirt out of his grasp. "It meant our retirement fund, David. It meant our trust. It meant my dignity." I walked to the front door and opened it wide. The cold wind howled, blowing dead leaves into the foyer. "Get out," I said. My voice wasn't loud. It was final. "Joyce, no!" "Get out," I screamed, the rage finally breaking through the surface. "Take your suitcase, take your burner phone, and get off my property before I call the cops and have you arrested for trespassing. This house is in my name. Get out!" David scrambled up, terrified by the sudden explosion. He grabbed the handle of his suitcase and stumbled out onto the porch, shivering in his silk pajamas. He looked back one last time, his eyes pleading. "Joyce, who will take care of me?" he whispered. "I don't know, David. I don't know, David," I said, reaching for the door handle. "Maybe you can call Thursday if you have $200. I slammed the heavy oak door in his face. I turned the deadbolt, click, then the top lock, click, then the security chain, rattle, slide. I leaned my forehead against the cool wood of the door, listening to his footsteps shuffle away down the driveway. It was over. The tumor was removed. I took a deep breath, expecting to feel sad, but I didn't. I felt lighter. I felt like I could finally breathe for the first time in years. But as I turned around to look at my empty, quiet house, I realized the story wasn't quite finished. David was gone, but he had left a mess behind: debts, lies, and a shattered reputation. I needed to clean house, literally and figuratively. And 2 months later, looking at where I am now versus where he ended up, you wouldn't even believe we once lived on the same planet. If you're loving this story, smash that like button and subscribe for more.
3 months later, I walked into the family courthouse wearing a white suit that cost more than David's current car. I looked like a bride. David looked like a funeral.
He was sitting at the defendant's table, slumped over. He had aged 10 years in 90 days. His silver fox hair was unwashed and thinning, and he was wearing a suit that was clearly 2 sizes too big, probably bought from a thrift store because I had donated all his fitted ones to the Salvation Army the day after I kicked him out. When the judge reviewed the financial records, the tuition theft, the company embezzlement, the burner phone records, it was a slaughter. My lawyer, a shark of a woman named Brenda, barely had to speak. The evidence screamed for itself. David tried to beg for alimony. He actually stood up with tears in his eyes and told the judge that he was accustomed to a certain lifestyle and that his health issues prevented him from working full-time. The judge, a stern woman with glasses on the end of her nose, looked over her spectacles at him. "Mr. Evans," she said, her voice dry as dust, "you spent your granddaughter's college fund on handbags. You are lucky I'm not sending you to jail for fraud. You will take on 100% of the credit card debt you accrued, and Mrs. Evans will retain the marital home and all retirement assets." The gavel banged. It sounded like the sweetest drum solo I'd ever heard. David walked out of that courthouse with nothing but a plastic bag of documents and a mountain of debt. He tried to approach me in the parking lot. "Joyce," he croaked, looking at my new car, "I'm living in a motel by the highway. The heating doesn't work. Can you just spare a 20 for lunch?" I lowered my sunglasses and looked at him. "You know, David, I'd love to help, but I have a nail appointment, and I hear they're hiring baggers at the grocery store down the street. It'll be good for your sciatica to stay active." I rolled up the window and drove off, leaving him in my rearview mirror, shrinking until he was nothing more than a speck of dust. As for Tanya, the grapevine is a powerful thing. When I reported David to the company, I didn't technically report her, but corporate investigations are thorough. She was fired for inappropriate use of company time and conflict of interest. Last I heard, Marcus had posted the whole story on Facebook, tagging her parents. She had to move back to her hometown in Ohio, reputation in tatters, with a fake designer bag as her only souvenir. I didn't keep the big suburban house. It was too big, too full of ghosts and old lies. I sold it for a massive profit. I took that money, plus my retirement, and I bought a chic 2-bedroom condo in the city with a view of the skyline. I filled it with modern art, bright colors, and furniture I liked. Tonight, I'm sitting on my balcony, sipping a glass of real Cabernet, not the cheap stuff David tried to pass off. The wind is cool, but I'm warm. My phone buzzes on the table. It's not a text from a secret lover. It's a notification from my bank. Deposit received. I started a blog, you see, Mama Joyce's Chronicles. I tell stories about life, resilience, and how to spot a liar from a mile away. It's taking off. A woman messaged me just yesterday. She said, "Because of your story, I finally checked the bank statements. I left him this morning. Thank you for saving my life." Reading that, I realized that the pain David caused didn't break me. It woke me up. I'm Joyce. I'm 60 years old. I'm single, rich, and finally truly free. And let me tell you, ladies, the view from the other side of heartbreak is absolutely beautiful. Did you like the story? Which city are you listening from? Let's meet in the comments. If you enjoyed this journey, you can support me by sending a super thanks so I can keep bringing more stories like this. Thank you so much for your sweet support. I'm looking forward to your comments. On the screen, you can see 2 new life stories that I highly recommend. There's so much more on my channel. Don't forget to subscribe. See you in the next life story. With love and respect.